Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Anthony Russell here, and the series took a little bit of a hiatus, mostly because we kept asking one particular player, and he couldn't find the time to do it. So instead, we've moved on to definitely the next best thing, and definitely someone who I think is going to be a really interesting conversation. They say the devil is in the detail. So once again, we are back here to put some detail into the Solent Devils, and one of the team is on the line with me now. So we will start as we traditionally do. Your name, please, sir.
It's Mark Duffy. Hello.
Jersey number?
98.
And how many years with the Solent Devils?
Oh, I think this is my fourth.
Yeah. He says counting. I make it three. You release Elite Prospects makes it three. So let's
call it three. 3 plus a COVID cup.
Yeah, we'll call it that. Anyway, Mark, you missed this last weekend's worth of action because real life got in the way. You were in far warmer climes than the Gosport Arena. How were you managing to keep tabs on everything when you were away? You've been on a work trip. You're back today, as you and I are talking. It's Tuesday as we're speaking, and you're back in the country now. How was it keeping tabs on things from a distance?
Yeah, no, it's obviously not as good as being here with everybody, but you know, everyone's posting everything on social media these days, so it's fairly easy to keep up all the WhatsApp groups and everything. But yeah, much further afield, and unfortunately, like you say, this season's been one quite heavily affected by real life for me, and I missed a lot of games, including this weekend's doubleheader with work commitments. So yeah, it's a real shame. It's a real shame, but it's far easier to keep up with the boys than it used to be. And they got 4 points without me. So who knows? Maybe that's a sign that I should go away more often.
We won't open that one up for discussion at any stage. Yeah. However, the bottom two sides in the league played last weekend. Oxford dispatched pretty handily 5-1, and then the 10-1 win against the MK Thunder at the weekend. The playoffs are now locked in. We now know when the regular season comes to an end, it's 2 legs against the Invicta Dynamos. Aside, I've watched the Devils beat in Gosport. I mean, aside from the fact that obviously you're the team's third netminder, Rory Martin Edwards, getting some game time on Sunday away at Milton Keynes. A decent weekend, good for the boys, and now something to kind of aim for with Invicta very much in the crosshairs in the next couple of weeks. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, okay, it's just locked in now, but I think realistically we've known for a few weeks it's going to be Invicta. I think for probably the last 3, maybe 4 weeks, it's been who's going to be fourth, who's going to be fifth between those two. So I think we've kind of known, especially looking at who each of us have to play for the remainder of the season. We've been expecting it. So, I mean, we've had some good results against Invicta this year. I think we've swept them, beaten them 4 times, if memory serves correctly. Which, I mean, it's a good omen going in, but of course it means for nothing. Invicta been there, done it more times than anyone can count. So there'll be a really, really tough test, but it's always a great game against Invicta. You know, they've got a lot of really good players in their team. Really good goalie. He's been playing incredibly well this year. So it's going to be a tough weekend for playoffs for sure.
The obviously, like you say, I mean, the Devils have won all 4 encounters so far across this season. Been a mixed year for both sides. Knowing that one of these two teams, who both sides are able to put up some really interesting, really good attacking hockey, but probably suffered a little bit from some inconsistencies across the campaign. One of these two sides is going to make Alexandra Palace come playoff weekend. I mean, it sounds very cliche to say it, but irrespective of the fact that we're potentially, a lot of people are going to predict that we'll see Streatham at Ali Pally, we'll see Chelmsford, and we'll see Slough. But I think people are kind of misunderestimating both of these two sides, irrespective of the fact, obviously, you will want to be making an appearance at the playoff weekend. Either of these two sides is capable of knocking off one of this season's kind of big 3, as it were, and really causing a shock come the postseason.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I could see either us or Invicta even winning the playoffs, you know, on a good run. So I think it's always the game which is the closest, you know, 4th versus 5th in the playoffs. It's always the one which has the least between the two. I think us and Invicta, we're quite similar sides. Like you say, we've had some defensive difficulties in both teams. I think we're both of the ilk where we've got a slightly older team than the average across the league. So yeah, I think we're very similar in terms of our play style. So it's always a good game. It's always a good contest between us and the Dynamos for sure.
Either way, moving away from this year and more onto you yourself. We played the quick game of how accurate is Elite Prospect. Born in Camberley, it says. How accurate is that?
Very, very inaccurate. But it's where I grew up. It's where I was living when I started playing hockey. As you can probably tell from my thick Geordie accent, I'm actually born up in Newcastle, but no, never really lived there.
So got into hockey down south. Tell us about your first kind of interaction with the game.
Sure. So I got into hockey through, roller hockey first. I used to rollerblade in the streets. That turned into, I think it was an auntie bought us myself and my younger brother, some hockey sticks. We used to whack around tennis balls in the front garden, which turned into, slightly more organised roller hockey, which turned into moving towards ice from there, really. Played, I think, since I was 12 years old, roller. Ice started a little bit later, maybe kind of 14, 15. But really kind of, it's been a big part of my life for, 20 plus years now. So, it's good fun. Keeps me out of trouble.
Gets you to the Middle East, if nothing else, at some stage. Tell us about that. I mean, it sounds a bit of a cliche thing, but there's quite a theme running through this Solent Devils side this year that roller has been a very, very big means of capturing a lot of you guys in terms of playing hockey inline and then moving into playing on ice. Is that? I mean, it does seem like it's pretty much Alex Murray, the head coach, has kind of been picking you all up from Bisley and various other roller rinks around the country at some stage.
Yeah, maybe. I'm sure it's not too much of a coincidence, right? Being down there, they're a little bit more isolated. There's less options to play for different teams. So I guess as kids, you take kind of all of the time on blades or wheels that you can get. So a lot of the guys play together. I don't play roller with all of the other guys. I play for a different team of guys that I've played with since I was a kid. We know each other all through that as well. I was playing under 14s GB, I think, with Mazar and with Aaron Taylor. So I've known the guys for a long time. But no, it's I think coincidence more than anything, perhaps, of bringing everyone together through roller. There's not tons and tons of roller players throughout the leagues, but I don't know. It's good fun. It's good fun when all of us stick together, and then no one can take the mick out of roller too much when we're all in the same team.
Either way, tell us about that first time you got. Tell us about the first time you got on the ice to have a go at actually playing hockey. Because for people who aren't aware, obviously the sports look very, very similar, but a lot of the mechanics, particularly in terms of skating, are very, very different from being on wheels to being on skates. Tell us about that first time you had a go about actually getting on the ice and having a go at hockey as a sport.
Yeah, sure. So I played roller with some old names: Johnny Boxhill, Graham Newell, Greg Martin. We all played roller together, and they were all of those guys were playing in Swindon. So I first went along to a training session in Swindon, which I think was maybe second year 14s, maybe first year 16s, something along those lines, and kind of jumped on the ice with those guys. My first thought, I'd ice skated a lot. I was confident I could ice skate. I'll never forget that first kind of stretch, drop down to my knees and just going, oh my God, this is a lot more slippery than I expected, coming from roller. But it's it's quick to adapt once you get used to it. There's especially as a kid, there was, ice hockey almost every single day through 14s, 16s, A and B teams to train with. So, it's very quick to adapt. And then I think it's, once you get used to the skating and the sliding around, it's you kind of pick up quite quickly the rest of it, really.
Yeah. So you sort of had your first sort of dalliance with it into Swindon, and then Elite Prospects has you moving to kind of where you spent a larger chunk of your hockey career, which was in Bracknell. The which from what I understand is kind of closer to where you're actually based. From what I
Yeah, yeah.
understand.
So I live in Bracknell. I'm 5 minutes from where the rink used to be, just around the corner. So yeah, I had a year over in Swindon, then moved back towards Bracknell, which was, I think, my parents who were driving me over to Swindon were very happy for that. So yeah, then a couple of years in Bracknell, and then I stopped ice for a number of years. I think it was 7 or 8 seasons in total. I stopped, which was well, university. I went to uni up in Nottingham, and I just didn't really have the time to play too much ice. I trained every so often with the uni teams up there. I knew a lot of the guys up there, but really I was just focused more on roller, just because it was a little bit easier. It's less commitment, and it was just easier to do. So I was doing quite a lot of it still, but up in Sheffield, up in Rotherham, which is a little bit up from Nottingham still as well. But yeah, it was good fun. I had lots of great experiences that I wouldn't change for anything. Traveled the world with roller, which has been great fun. But yeah, after uni, back for a few years, and then yeah, I was really happy to kind of get back into the ice scene. More so, it was actually Alex Murray that kind of really got me back into the ice as well. I think he was looking for a goalie the year that, maybe it was the year that Chico had gone across to the island, and I came out for a couple of summer skates, and yeah, he was kind of pulling my leg, come on, get back in, sign with us, we need a goalie. So yeah, skated, and then I just kind of thought, well, I live in Bracknell. How about I reach out to some of the old Bracknell contacts? So, and Gareth Cox was coaching at the Hornets. A lot of the guys who I had known for years, like Matt Jordan, Simon Griffiths, two-way, they were all playing in the Hornets. So gave those boys a shout, and yeah, ended up signing back in Bracknell after a good, I think it was seven seasons that I hadn't played ice.
It was about 7 seasons away. Looking at it, just going back to that first year in Bracknell, it's interesting to kind of see, and some of the older Devils fans who kind of remember some of the older years of the old ENL as it used to be will kind of remember some of the names of some of the guys you played in juniors with. Brad Watchhorn, Sam Oakford was on that junior team as well. And Sam Oakford, of course, who went on to play Elite League. Scott Spearing, of course, is a name that a lot of people will be familiar with as well. A certain gentleman by the name of Stefan Hogarth, who will not be quite as popular a name with some of our friends who watch Elite League hockey. But certainly, I'm very interested in a couple of names. Certainly, in terms of a couple of the goalies that you had along with you, because you in that junior team you had David Ride and Adam Marashi, of course, who at the sort of the level that the Devils have been around for quite some time are kind of keepers. They're names that some of the older Devils fans will definitely kind of remember. And both of those guys, and along with yourself, kind of developed into at this kind of level, developed into pretty solid netminders all in all.
Yeah, no, I knew Marashi even before that. Marashi and I were over in Swindon together as well, the couple of years before. So yeah, no, plenty of good guys. I think even goalies and players looking around the leagues, there's so many guys who have been through Bracknell. If you look at the Streatham team, about 90% of them have played in Bracknell. Milt's included, talking goalies. But well, probably Tommy Annetts as well. You put into that category. He was in Bracknell for a while when I was there. Maybe in juniors, I think he went over to Guildford quite early in that season. But there was a lot. David Print as well back in the days. There was a whole bunch of us. But no, I mean, names you mentioned there, Ridey. He was a good mate of mine for years and years. We knew each other through school and things as well as through hockey. And yeah, there's just a lot of really good guys. I was kind of the only one of that group not in contention with the Bees, so I was probably more consistently in the 19s team than, let's say, Ridey, Tommy, Marashi, who were all kind of being pulled away to the Hornets, to the Bees for different games, and I was kind of the one that was in the 19s as it was back then, probably more consistently, even though because those guys were playing up a little bit more. But no, there's some really good goalies, some really good guys who played through those teams.
I mean, as you say, went away from the sport on the ice for a while, went to roller, did university, like you say, roller gave you the experience of kind of traveling around the world. Eventually, obviously, university ends. You end up back home in Bracknell for a couple of years. I'm massively interested, particularly by the 2015-2016 Bracknell Hornets, only because there are some wild names on that Hornets roster from that year. Aside from the fact that you had some proper traditional names and some names that people will be familiar with from Div 1, from One South this year, people like JJ Pitchley, like Josh Martin, like Brandon Miles. Like you said, half the Streatham team has made its way through Bracknell at some point. Hi, Ben Painter. But other names as well that are on that list, like the Belfast Giants played that year. At least one of the Hine Pitcher boys played that season as well. Flynn Stitch Cunningham, who's now a linesman. Josh Sherrington, who is probably about to win the Div 2 title with Guildford this weekend. And then there's Greg Chambers and Thomas Foytek. Now, those are two names that people will not remember, but Thomas Foytek was an import who sort of bounced around between Basingstoke and Slough and Swindon in the old EPL. And former Great Britain international 70-80 point scorer in the Elite League, Greg Chambers. That Hornets team from memory sounds absolutely mad in terms of just the random cacophony of guys thrown together in Bracknell that year.
Yeah, it was a pretty mad year, and Hughesy was coach that year, I think, as well. But yeah, I mean, mad is probably the word I would choose. There's some great stories. I mean, Chubbs is one of the greatest guys you could ever chat to. He's absolutely hilarious. He's your best mate and your worst enemy all rolled into one. I'll never forget a night out, like just walking down we were in Reading, walking down the high street, and he just kind of goes, "I'm hungry." Runs into Nando's, tries to grab a chicken off of the grill behind the behind the counter there, and we're ending up not running away, but just wondering what's going to happen. It's he's a hilarious guy. But I think one thing that we didn't do particularly well that year, it was a very difficult season on the ice, but off the ice, it was, 18-20 absolute beauties. It was great fun, maybe a little bit too much fun off the ice, leading to not such good results on the ice. But it was, a really good fun year.
Given the fact that, unfortunately, as you mentioned earlier, the rink in Bracknell is now closed, it is gone. Obviously, Danny Myers has kind of got his bits and pieces over with the Ozone rink now in Bracknell, and looks like it's going to become, kind of like a force for this kind of new 3-on-3 model that's obviously made its way into kind of the Youth Olympics, and the IIHF is going to experiment with it. But for people who don't remember it, what was the Hive like as a place to play? Kind of give people that kind of impression, because obviously Devils fans will know that Gosport is a singular entity in British ice hockey, especially now given that the rink on the Isle of Wight has closed. But Bracknell comes with within our sport, comes within name recognition, history, and stories as long as your arm. But for people who weren't aware, tell people what Bracknell was like.
I mean, Bracknell was a hub. Even not just the rink itself, but it was a hockey place, a hockey town. When I was playing for the Hornets, living in Bracknell, you'd go out to the shops on a Saturday morning or the pub on a Friday night, and there'd be people wanting to talk to you. Everyone knew who the Bees were, everyone knew the Hornets, and it was just a place that really kind of loved hockey. The rink itself as well was just there's not that many sports facilities, if you like, which are really dedicated to hockey. There's a couple around with, I guess, Romford and Streatham in particular, but I wouldn't say that ice hockey is the main thing that happens there. They have other sports teams that play out of there. There's swimming, there's racket sports, all kinds of things going on. But everything in Bracknell was always pointed towards the hockey and towards the Bees. And really back in even the BNL days, back when John Knight himself was paying the bills, everything was always pointed towards hockey through everywhere. And it was an amazing place to play. We always used to joke that, I was going to that rink since I was 14 years old, and I don't think there was a lick of paint on the walls or a change of carpet from those times to when it was bulldozed, you know. But it was just a great place to be. It always kind of felt like home, as cheesy as that may sound, you know. It was somewhere that was a constant for a lot of years and a lot of people's kind of lives throughout the leagues and the hockey world.
The time at Bracknell comes to an end. What motivated the move to Oxford? Because you were a City star for a good couple of years. There was a league title win involved in that as well. What, given the fact that you, like you say, you were around the corner, what made you move on?
Yeah, so I mean, a couple of things really. There was wanting to do something a little bit different. You know, there was a lot of guys leaving that Hornets team after, like I said before, a very difficult season on the ice. I had some friends up in Oxford as well. I mean, Tommy Annetts was a goalie. He during the season before, he dropped down from the Bees and gone over to Oxford. I've been close with Tommy for years and years, and he was kind of in my ear a bit, saying, "Come across," and it was kind of really through him that it all got sorted out. So yeah, really the challenge, do something different, play somewhere else. Just sounded good, to be honest. That's and I did it. I just kind of took the plunge and just went somewhere new, and it was great fun. Some great boys over there as well.
Yeah, certainly, like you mentioned, because Tommy Annetts was there, of course, now retired, won a few bits and pieces with Streatham. Shannon Long, I believe, probably popped up there at least once following the demise of the island. I want to say Aaron Burton was around at that point as well. He's a guy who's kind of bounced around a little bit in kind of Div 1 and Div 2's netminder ranks.
He was. So I think Burt's was there. I think he was the 18s goalie the first year I was there. Yeah, I think he was a young guy. He was kind of training up a little bit with us. Shannon, I don't think we actually crossed paths up there, but I think I came in just after he left. Went travelling.
Fair enough. Of course, we can't really touch on, before we touch a bit more on the Devils and kind of how things are for you now, we can't talk about Oxford really without talking about one man, because of course he went away and he's now come back, of course, which is Darren Elliott, the man they call Mr. Oxford, and that City Stars team. Certainly, I know you played with a few guys like that. And in terms of sort of names, I think of guys like Dom Hopkins. I think of Alan Green. I want to say Yaroslav Chesky was there playing for Oxford when you played there as well. So, as well as I think probably Ben Painter, I want to say, was probably playing for the City Stars at that point as well. So another another interesting group of guys.
Definitely, yeah. Bairdy was there at the time. Hallam was there for a while. A few of the old guard from Oxford as well, you know. So I mean, Dax Edges, I think, is still playing there, but Joe Edwards, Darren Elliott, like you say, all of the Flory brothers. Yeah, it was a great bunch, like really, really good. It was and a really, really good team to kind of be a part of, you know. There was a really tight room. Everyone was everyone's best mate, you know. There wasn't a single person kind of in the change room that you wouldn't say, yeah, I'll go and have a chat with that guy, you know. There was no cliques or anything. It was just a really, really good room. And similar to Bracknell, you know, lots of names from across the leagues through those teams then as well. So great fun. It's really good to see Elsie back playing as well this season. You know, I love Elsie to bits. He's an absolute hero. But it's he was still very much able when he decided to stop. So it's good to see him. Good to see him back, you know, and I think he's still very heavily involved with all of the coaching of the junior teams up there. His kid, his nephew, they're playing there, and they're kind of really enjoying it as well, which is good to see. And it's awesome that he's able to give so much back to the club that he's kind of been a part of for so long.
And then we get to where we are now, of course. COVID takes its toll on everything and everyone, and you end up as a Solent Devil playing out of Gosport in a pandemic with nobody there. I mean, aside from the fact, obviously, Alex Murray has a way of kind of getting in everybody's ear to kind of eventually talk people around into coming and playing for the club. Talk about that conversation there. How did he eventually convince you that the time was right to kind of to make your way down to Gosport?
Yeah, I think it's like I say, I've known Muzzer a long time. He's a good mate, and it's we had a few conversations over the years about, are you going to come and play for us now? How about now? How about now? I almost went the year that I actually ended up going to Oxford. The year that I did half and half with Oxford and Bracknell as well. I was talking to him then about maybe coming down to the Devils then as well. But no, I mean, it's when I eventually say yes, to put it like that. It's yeah, I think the time was right. You know, there was it's a good bunch of guys. Again, I think I've said that for every single team we've talked about. A good bunch of guys. But it's you know, there's a lot of guys down there. I mean, obviously there was Chico, who is the long-standing kind of goalie in that team. But it just felt like the right time. You know, it was changes all across the leagues. Obviously, the opportunity to play in, I mean, I always call it the COVID Cup. I don't know if it was actually called that or something different. Probably had a more official name, but it's
its actual name and what we're calling it are different things. I think everybody's called it the COVID Cup, whether they wanted to call that or not.
So, but no, I think the conversation with Muzz was really just right. Do you want to? We're looking for someone like you to come down. I was open to the challenge. Guys who I know well going down there as well. So I mean, Connor Hutch, for example, we played together in Bracknell. He lives just around the corner from me. He was talking about going down as well. So things just lined up, you know, and it was the right time. And definitely very glad that I did and that I didn't go somewhere else. You know, it's I'm really happy with the decision and really happy to still be there. You know.
Yeah. I suppose the question that kind of looms over netminding as a position is because only one of you can ever play at one time, and coming to a club like the Devils, where at the time Chico, Christian Cole was and probably is, is held in such a high regard that you're ever really going to kind of be going there to kind of be a number two in that kind of sense. Nobody was ever really going, like Chico was the number one, and there was never really much kind of a discussion about that any other way. As a netminder, what's your mentality going into a situation like that? Because ultimately, and it's never been said, and the Devils as an organisation do not have retired numbers at this moment in time, but you have to think when the committee eventually kind of sit down and have that discussion, there's a few names that are going to pop out of in that discussion, Chico, which will be one. But what's the mentality for a guy like yourself going into a team kind of knowing that the other netminder is the guy for the club in that sense?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, really, there's one thing to it, which is it's similar to what I remember saying when I went to Oxford with Tommy. You know, it was a guy who is incredibly good. I think my job for a lot of the point there is to make sure that a guy isn't sleeping and resting on their laurels, right? Make sure that you keep pushing them, to make sure that the coaches, the fans, the rest of the boys that are kind of there know that, you know, if this guy who is the set in stone number one is starting to slack a little bit, there's someone hot on the tails there, right? Someone that can step in, someone who someone who isn't going to be too much of a kind of a weakness if you step in. And I think that's kind of always been that mentality, you know, keep pushing them to make sure that they stay at their best, you know. And really, Chico, he was incredible. You know, I'm sure he could come back tomorrow and he'd still be incredible. And yeah, I mean, I think I was able to kind of keep pushing him. I think what his last season was, I don't know the stats, but I would speculate one of his best seasons. And it was a great way for him to kind of to finish. And you know, I would like to think I kind of helped kind of push him there. You know, helped him through training, perhaps. Like we had a lot of routines together. You know, I get on really well with him, and yeah, it's really good to be there and to be pushing a guy like Chico to be at his best and make sure that he doesn't rest on his laurels too much as well.
You must have to develop an awful lot of patience, though, in that kind
Yeah,
of
for
role.
sure.
And I say that as somebody who's naturally very impatient, but it must be there's a great amount of mental sort of bits and pieces involved in being a netminder anyway. But to be the guy who has to effectively always be on and wait at the same time, that's quite a mental challenge. I'm not sure people quite understand.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, the question, I think that it gets put a different way around a lot of times, which is, would you not rather play more in a lower league or something? Which is basically what you're saying, I think, but in nicer words. And I think it's maybe, but it's still part of kind of being part of the team. You know, I definitely don't feel like a spare part or anything like, or didn't feel like a spare part with Chico. Felt as much as a part of the team as kind of anybody, you know. And yeah, maybe kind of get used to it a little bit. It's good to it's good to kind of be there and to be keeping yourself switched on and making sure that you are ready all the time. And you know, I mean, to some extent as well. And we talked right at the start. You know, other things, real life, kind of getting in the way. There's a little bit of that which kind of going on. You know, I mean, I travel quite a lot for work, so the fact that I'm able to step away sometimes for work and not too much to the detriment of the team is also it's quite a good thing as well. You know, not to be letting everyone down too much when I am stepping away.
I'm actually gonna pull you up on something here, just because actually, no, it's not about necessarily stepping down and playing. Because actually, one of the things, and this is a conversation I've had with a lot of different goalies over time, and certainly one person I've had is somebody who also will be known to the Devils, in Dan Weller-Evans, of course, who kind of helped out a victory in the COVID Cup. But Dan is a guy who spent a lot of his career kind of as a backup. And actually, one of the things that as a netminder you have to do if you're playing is being switched on for very, very long periods of time with a little bit of a break when the music starts blaring out of the speakers above you. But actually, as a backup, you've got to, it's almost kind of that situation kind of a little bit in reverse, because there's long periods of kind of waiting and then immediately needing to switch on and be ready to go at a moment's notice. That's a skill. That's a skill you have to develop over time, that can be developed over time as well. And obviously, you know, it goes without saying, I think all hockey players would like to play as many minutes as they possibly physically can do. But if you're being called into that position, there's actually an element of, like you say, you've got to be of a standard where when you are called on, you can walk in, you can skate into the net, and you are not going to be, like you said, you're not going to be a detriment to anybody there. But there's a real element there of actually just having to have that switch ready to go at a moment's notice. I just wonder, is that something that you can, is that something that's trainable? Is that coachable? Can somebody be a bit naturally better disposed to that kind of ability, do you think? Or does that really need kind of working at as well?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, I think a lot of guys maybe after juniors, early in the kind of the senior game in that kind of position, a lot of guys probably say, "Oh, well, if I'm not going to play, I'm not going to play," you know. And it's so to that extent, I think, yeah, I mean, you definitely have to work at it. There's the element of making sure that you still train, making sure that you're working and you want to be part of it. And I think being a part of the group, you know, is a big part of that. You know, I think I always like to think I'm a kind of a figure in the changing room, you know, and close with all of the boys. And I think it's important to kind of be that. So when you step in, if you step in the middle of a game or something, everyone's kind of got your back, and you're stepping into a unit. You know, you're not just replacing one for one, so to speak. So it's definitely something that gets worked on. Maybe not directly. I mean, there's not one thing that you would do to try and kind of train that, but I think it's something that you develop as you kind of get a bit more mature in the game, shall we say.
As a netminder, I do need to ask this question, because I've met some netminders who are obsessed with it, and I've met some netminders who just aren't that fussed about it. How much of a goalie gearhead are you? because I come from having, like I say, having been in Basingstoke where I've had Dan Weller-Evans, who wants it to look nice but isn't too fussed about it, and Alex Metham, who is, for people who don't know, a goalie gear obsessive. He mends gear for people into the bargain as well. Where do you fall on that spectrum in terms of how big you are or how obsessed you are about your gear?
I mean, don't get me wrong, I want it to match. I want it to be clean and fresh. I've got my routines for the way I put stuff on, the way I look after my kit. But in terms of going all out on the details, changing little things, I couldn't care less, to be honest. As long as it's comfortable, I really hate. I really love new gloves and new pads. I really hate new shorts and new body armor. It's unfortunately gone are the days where you're allowed to kind of cut bits out of the kit to make it a little bit easier to move around in and like fit a little bit more comfortably and stuff. But it's I couldn't even tell you the name of like the range of my chest plate or my shorts or anything like that. Well, I can tell you my shorts are from I was in California in the summer and they came out of the bargain bin in Goldie Monkey. So it's it's cost effectiveness when the team's not going to pay for them. So I'm certainly I want it to look nice. I want it to obviously do the job, and I want it to be a certain way and feel a certain way. But in terms of the brands, the names, I couldn't care any less, to tell you the truth.
Although the one thing, of course, that netminders are very, very particular about is the helmet, is the design. Now, some guys are a bit more than others. Some people go down the old sort of Martin Gerber in the NHL route, just going for the all black Darth Gerber, as you were. And some guys will have really, really elaborate designs. When you're designing your bucket, where do you kind of go to? Do you always go with like a really, really big idea, or is it kind of a thing where it's just I'm happy if it looks nice and I'm not too fussed?
So there's two things I've always had, and a mate of mine has done my helmet for the last few years, and there's always just two things. I always have the team logo on there, and I always have there's always a Duffman from The Simpsons on there as well, which
Can't imagine why.
I know, shock, right? But it's again, it's one of those things that started as a joke, like used to get called the Duffman if ever there was Juice Boy. Like someone's always bringing a Duffman beer or something, and just kind of owned it, and it's kind of just one of those things. I always have the Duffman, oh yeah, on there somewhere, and the team logo. But then other than that, I kind of just said to my mate, just have some fun, make it look cool, and and go from there. And it's like it's wrapped as well, actually. So I've never had my helmet sprayed. It's always been wrapped, and it's a mate of mine that does that. 39 Designs, if anyone's interested.
Always plug your phrase. We're always in favour of such
Definitely.
things. Where with Devils this year, there's obviously the three of you. Like you say, you've had work, life, and you had to kind of spin and out a bit of the team this year. As a trio, you've got Aaron. You've got Aaron, who's been starting majority of the games, who's spent a lot of time with the Div 2 side, but stepped in, like we said, he stepped in last weekend as well. Talk about dynamic, because it's got to be interesting with two. Having three of you has got to make things even a bit more crowded practice, especially in gospel. There's no room.
Yeah, and the change room's even smaller than the rink. But yeah, I mean, it's good. I think we've got a good group. Rory as well is quite newly with. I want to say it's the Marines. It might be the Air Force. It might be the Navy. One of those. So he's got other real life commitments as well. Like I said a couple of times, I think Aaron's a guy that I've been mates with for 20 plus years. I was certainly supposed to play more this year than I have done with work, with the odd niggle here and there. No one will tell you that more so than Aaron's wife. So it's a good group we've got. It's we get on well. We all support each other. And it's it's a really good balance, I think, that we've got. I think we're all good at different things. We've all got different things going on in life. I'm traveling quite a lot. Rory's kind of serving in the forces. Aaron's got a family, so we've all got different commitments. But I think it all balances itself out quite nicely, and there's no kind of hard feelings or anything within it all. I mean, I want Aaron to stand on his head when I'm not playing, and he is, and I want us to have the best possible results. There's no bitterness, there's no anything like that. I think we've got a really good dynamic between the three of us.
I'll ask the question then, because I'm interested. Because where there's three of you, obviously that makes that a bit of an interesting choice. And like you say, you've got guys who can rotate in and out when life gets in the way. Put Aaron to one side, put Rory to one side, put yourself to one side. Something goes completely awry. Who out of the outskaters, if you had to chuck them in goal, would do the best in goal?
I mean, it's going to be Drew, right? It's Drew loves. I mean, the Christmas games, the end of season games. Drew loves to throw the pads on. I mean, there's always the looming thought that he might break one of his old hips or something, which we need to be careful of. But I think he's definitely the one who would step in. I think he loves to throw the pads on every now and again and dive around.
You see, I probably, because he's so big, you could just wedge him into the net, and he would and nobody be able to score past him because he wouldn't be in space. Rather than, and sorry, Drew, you are the oldest active player in the National Ice Hockey League entire structure currently. So maybe we'll keep you skating out rather than putting you in net. Who would be the worst then? If we're gonna stick Drew in, who'd be the worst person to put in goal out of the lot you've got, the guys you've got at the moment? Because my initial answer was Kane Russell, not aside from the fact he's probably one of the best forwards in the division. He's a bit too small. Just lob him inside the crease.
Yeah, you're right. I think when Kane could maybe borrow one pad or something, maybe Scotty or Hutch could borrow the other pad and put two in there and see how they get on. But probably one of the smaller guys, right? Maybe Kane, maybe Oscar. Yeah, I don't think any of those guys would be first in the queue to have a go.
No, especially not with Kane Russell's skill set. I don't think he wants to be anywhere near standing in the crease for that particular reason. Anyway,
yeah, exactly.
As we edge towards the end of our time together here, do a few sort of quick fire questions just to kind of round things off. Best shooter on the team? Who's the shot that you fear the most in practice and warm up?
Yeah, in what context? You mean who's going to score or who's going to hurt you?
Oh, who's going to ding you off your helmet? Who's going to ding you in your mask during warm up and cause you a problem?
Well, I think that would be Mark Pitts, but he's doing it on purpose. I think the one who's not doing it on purpose, I think the big rig, he can really shoot. Joe, he's got a hell of a shot on him. Drew can still put them away, the best of them. But I mean, Kane as well, like you said. I mean, Liam's probably the most dangerous shooter. He's the guy who you're most worried about scoring. It's yeah, we're quite lucky. We've got a number of guys who are really kind of handy in front of the net, and lots of guys who can really shoot this year.
Best player you've ever played against?
Against? Karol Rakunik, NHL guy. It was in a roller hockey tournament in the when I was playing for GB. I think I was 20. He was playing for the Czech national team. I think Rick Nash played in the same tournament as well, actually. But yeah, Karol Rakunik is definitely the best player I've played against.
Win a gold medal with GB roller hockey, but never win anything on the ice ever for the rest of your career, or be part of a Devils team that finally wins the league.
I mean, we're not going to send the link to this podcast to any of the roller guys, but it's definitely going to be the league with the Devils. You know, I mean, ice hockey. I mean, we've talked about roller probably a lot more than I expected to in this podcast, but it's good fun. I love it because it's fun. But ice is it's a different sport. It's a much more professional organization, and it means more. You know, so I'll do anything that I could to be part of a team with a Devils team that finally wins the league. You know, the league's not happened this year, but who knows? Playoffs still could. So absolutely anything that I could do to be a part of a Devils team that brings home some silverware. That's number one on the would love to do list.
You get given the control over the aux cable in the dressing room. What's the first song you're putting on?
Oh, the first thing I'm doing if someone gives me that aux is throwing it at someone else. It's I think pre-game there is, if you even mess with the playlist that Muzz has had set in stone for about the last, well, what sounds like 2 decades, then there's hell on, but I don't want that pressure. So if it comes to you, you've got to find that playlist that starts with some Linkin Park or some System of a Down or something. But no, that's not for me. I want to stay as far away from that as possible.
Do you have an NHL team, or are you not that interested?
To be honest, I mean, similar to, I know you spoke with Coley, and he told you that he's not really so into it. I think I've got a few players that I like. I always liked the LA Kings because I used to really love Jonathan Quick, and even though he's not playing there anymore, you know, it's if I was to pick one, I'd say the Kings, I think. But I if I'm honest, I probably couldn't even name 10 guys in the NHL. It's just not something that I follow too much, to tell you the truth.
Hockey's for playing rather than watching for you.
Exactly.
When it comes to the summer, beach, golf course, which of the two?
Can you have a golf course by the beach? Would that work?
I come from the Mark Twain school of thought when it comes to golf, which is that golf is a good walk spoiled. So no, you have to choose one or the other.
I'll go beach for sure. Get me on the sand. Get me a pina colada. There we are. I'm set.
And the last question then, given that you and I are of a relatively similar age, and you are closer towards the end of your career than the beginning, when the time comes where you finally hang the pads up and say, that's it, my ice hockey career is done, what do you want people's memory of Mark Duffy to be?
Oh God, there's a question. I don't know. You know, I think good guy, improved the teams he was on, and someone that we'd rather have than rather not have, I think is where I'd like to be. I think it's someone who left a positive impact with the guys he played with. That's where I'd like to be.
Now, we were talking about this very briefly before we started recording this course. The Devils are off this weekend. You've made it back into the country, and then you've got a weekend off. What's the plan for the weekend then? What are you going to do? You're going to go watch the Devils? What you're going to stay at home for the weekend, having been away?
I don't have a particularly sexy answer for you, I'm afraid. I'm actually elsewhere for work, but just fortunately not missing any games this time. So I will be in London with work. I've got an awards evening to go to on Saturday night, black tie event up in Knightsbridge. So for me, it's strictly sensible this weekend, but should be let my hair down, so to speak, I guess, with the work with the guys from work, and one of our products is nominated for an award in the annual Aesthetics Awards. So it will be a fun evening watching that.
Yeah. And then after that, of course, the final weekend of the regular season, which sees the Devils at home to the Romford Buccaneers, and then the final game of the league campaign is away on the high road against Streatham. Hoping for some ice time out of those 2 games.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's I'm not joking when I say I want to play in every single game, right? I think every week when I speak to Mars, I tell him the same thing. It's even though I've not played so much this year, I absolutely want to. I think both of those games are important games. Streatham, I played a game against Streatham earlier in the year, and obviously we lost. So it'd be great to kind of have that. And like we said as well, I know most of the boys there, so it's always great to play against guys that you're friends with. And Romford as well, they're a team that we have struggled against this year. It's always a tough game, and it's one that we absolutely want to win. We want to come through this last weekend strong, and then really take some momentum into the playoff weekend. So, do I want some ice time? Absolutely. But I think it's the most important thing for this weekend, especially now that playoff positions are set, is building some momentum and really making sure that we leave the season flying and get a good running start at those playoffs.
Absolutely, can't argue that. For those of you who are not available to go to any black tie events in Knightsbridge this weekend, you can of course get your hockey fix at the Gosport Arena this weekend. 5 p.m. face-off this coming Saturday. The Solent Junior Devils now locked into the South 2 playoffs, of course, confirmed in, but they will take on fellow playoff contenders, the Peterborough Phantoms, this coming Saturday. Otherwise, we will leave this man to go and have a rest, as he flew back into the country this morning, and he has very graciously done this interview, hopped up on caffeine to get him through. Mark Duffy, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me this evening. All the best for the last couple of weeks of the season.
Thanks for having me, mate. It's been a pleasure. Cheers.